This video is powered by the pros at Pascal Air Plumbing and Electric. Arkansas owned, Arkansas operated. GoPascal.com.
Kendall Rogers is with us from D1 Baseball. Earlier today, they announced the creation of a brand new subscription service that is geared around SEC baseball, and they came out with their preseason top 25 today, have Arkansas ranked 8th. Great timing, Kendall. As always, you knocked it out of the park. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. How about yourself?
Well, I'm ready for baseball, man. I guess I'm always ready for baseball. I think people in Arkansas are usually ready for college baseball. So here we are,
sure,
31
absolutely.
days away. What do you?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Go ahead.
No, you've got something to say, please.
No, I'm just saying it's crazy when you look at the Southeastern Conference and, you look at our top 25, and it's kind of funny. I was having this conversation with an Arkansas fan earlier this morning, and, you look at the Hogs and you're like, okay, number 8 in the country. I feel pretty good about where we are. And then you kind of take a step back and go, oh, we're the 6th SEC team in the rankings. So it's going to be an incredible year in that conference.
And 4th in the West, if you just go by those rankings, which just says so much about the strength of the league and the strength of the division.
Yeah.
But I think it also says a little bit about, where Arkansas is right now. There's no secret. You expect to see a very talented pitching staff. Now a veteran pitching staff, now that Hagen Smith is a year older, Brady Tigert's a year older, that McIntyre, emerged last year, and hoping to see Jackson Wiggins break out. The questions are all on the bat side of the ball, and then I think about the glove work because they were so darn good in the field last year, and it's nothing against the guys that are here. I just can't imagine anybody being, better up the middle than we saw last year. So, there's one side of the game that you feel really confident in, and another that's really very much more of a wait and see.
Yeah, I will say this about the pitching staff. I do think when you look at Jackson Wiggins, he's a guy that he has shown, flashes of brilliance. But at the end of the day, there is a question mark in the sense, like, will we consistently see that from him? I think we will, but that is a little bit of a question mark. Hagen Smith, I agree with you, Phil. There's not much doubt in my mind that he's going to have a great year, especially when you look at just the hard-nosed way he kind of pitched in the last year in Stillwater and things like that. But, offensively and defensively, I think with this team, I think with Arkansas in general, I think you look at this program as one that always seems to play defense. It's like even if you are losing 3 or 4 guys, you're like, okay, Arkansas is just going to Arkansas. Like, they're going to play really good defense. And I think, when you look at Hudson Polk behind the plate, he's a guy that is really good with his receiving and blocking skills, just an overall really solid player. But he's one of those guys that I think when he gets immersed in that program will play at a higher level than maybe what people expected. So I just think when you look at tradition with this program, like they're just going to play really good defense. And I think offensively, Peyton Stovall, I feel like, last year, especially early on, you saw it and I saw it early on, kind of had a little bit of an ups and downs. But, he played really well down the stretch, and getting Brady Slavens back was just absolutely massive, just to get not only a power bat like that, in your lineup for another year, but just to get that experience back is huge. And, of course, Jared Wegner, we talk about transfers, whether junior college level or the 4-year level. Jared Wegner from Creighton's a big-time power hitter. He's one of those guys that could go from, like, a decently known player, during his Creighton days to a guy that all of a sudden we look in the SEC, and he could turn into a Sonny DeShera type of power hitter. Like, he could be a guy that all of a sudden you kind of throw him in a program like this, and he hits 320 with, 18, 19 home runs. Like, he can be that kind of player. And then, Tavian Josenberger was a kid that, I saw, when he was in Kansas. And, he's a really talented overall player. He's a guy with a lot of tools, a lot of upside, and I think he's going to have a really good year too. So there's experience. There's transfers, but there's experience in the lineup.
The starting pitching, the way they figure out starting pitching is going to be fascinating because, you have a sense like Hagen Smith is going to start the first weekend. The same with Jackson Wiggins. Heck, I feel the same way about Brady Tigert, though. He closed most of the year last season. Then there are other guys, like a Zach Morris who emerged late in the season as a long reliever and in some real clutch situations. I've heard a lot about Hunter Holland. I have yet to be able to watch him pitch more than a couple of innings in a fall game. Long left-hander out of San Jac. Cody Adcock, too, a right-hander that was at Ole Miss previously, then Crowder College.
Yep.
Any one of them that don't work out as a starter will get a chance to relieve. But, man, the competition for the starting rotation for this team, I mean, it's going to be competitive amongst themselves for, like, the first month of the regular season.
There's no doubt. And Brady Tiger would be the interesting one for me because I think it was Dave Van Horn. It's a really delicate situation because if you look at Brady overall, most guys, they want to be starters, right? I mean, that kind of gives them a kind of a better ticket at the next level. But I think when you look at Brady Tiger, like he was so good in that back end role that you're kind of like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I just wonder if that's kind of what they feel like with him, especially when you have options. You talk about Cody Adcock, a guy that's going to get in the mid-90s. With his fastball, you look at Hunter Holland, a lefty that's going to get into the 90s as well with really good overall stuff. They have options. They have multiple options. So I guess it's one of those, quote unquote good problems to have. Like Matt Hobbs has some tough decisions to make, but he's not void of 3 or 4 not only solid options but really good options. So I actually feel like going into the season on Brady Tiger just early in the spring. Just looks like slam dunk, number 3 pitcher on this team. He can go 5 or 6 innings. Like, unless it's just slam dunk, I really like him in that back end role. I love his composure, his poise, his stuff back there. That breaking ball, to me, especially in the game, just really plays up. So I'm with you. I'm fascinated to see what they do. But I think I would be a little surprised to see Brady make that move to the starting rotation. But that's why I write, and that's why DVH coaches.
You mentioned Hudson Polk at catcher. Any Arkansas team that goes to Omaha has a catcher that is special. We've seen that with Grant Cook, with the Casey Opitz. And last year, Michael Turner emerged after really not getting a chance to catch very much at Kent State. Polk is an interesting guy. And Parker Rowland, too, a guy that started his career at Arkansas State. Polk was in Omaha last year as the backup for Oklahoma that finished runner-up. I just haven't had a chance to get my eyes on them enough. I just know how important that position is and how difficult it is to replace catchers that, gain trust of all the pitchers, and you have almost the same pitching staff that we just mentioned. So that's one place that I'm really focused on really throughout the entire season.
Yeah, I mean, he certainly seems to be more of a defender than he is an offensive guy. But you know what? If you're Arkansas with all these different offensive options, that doesn't bother me. Honestly, if I'm a coach and I have a catcher that can hit 250, 260 with a little bit of power, I'm totally happy with that as long as he's playing really good defense. And the thing I'll say about Polk is what I like about his background, I'm guessing this is what DVH kind of liked about him in the portal too, is the fact that he was with a team that played for a national championship. And, oh, by the way, he kind of learned a little bit under, Jimmy Crooks, who was certainly a standout catcher at Oklahoma. So, you kind of have that experience of being in Omaha, knowing what that big-time feeling is like, the kind of the level you have to play at to get there. And then number 2, he played behind a really, really good catcher, really, frankly, one of the top 9 or 10 catchers in college baseball last year. So I like his background, and he certainly seems to have a really good defensive skill set. Again, if I'm a Hogs fan, what you're looking for is, 250 to 270, 8, 10, 12 home runs, and play really good defense. If you get that, I think you're happy.
I think you're looking for the same thing at shortstop too, and somebody that can field the ball on a consistent level. When we're talking about guys scouting reports, what you think about them, their numbers, and all of that, where they played before. How much of how you project Arkansas looking forward has to do with trust of the coaching staff and knowledge of the coaching staff, and how good Dave has been putting teams together, and how good of a pitching coach Matt Hobbs is, and Nate Thompson. How much of because so often it's difficult to project how a team is going to perform. You just trust the coaches and their track record, and you got a lot to go by with these 3 coaches.
No, you're right, and it kind of goes back to what we were talking about with catcher earlier. It's like it just seems like no matter who they lose, they play really well behind the plate, or they find a piece. Like last year, Michael Turner comes in from Kent. Granted, he was already a really good player, but, comes in from Kent. They don't skip a beat. If anything, they probably get a little bit more offensive at that position. And then you look at Arkansas historically at the middle. that coaching staff just does a great job. And I think, the big thing for me when I look at the Hogs historically, especially over the last decade, they place a premium on defense. And in modern college baseball, if you can play good defense, your pitching's above average, you've got a chance to win a lot of baseball games. And most importantly for a program like Arkansas, is you have a chance to win a national championship. So I'm with you. There is an element. I know it sounds kind of crazy, but I mean there is an element of in our picking and ranking that looks at it as like the history of a coaching staff. For instance, Texas Tech has a lot of question marks. So they have more question marks than probably any of these perennial powers, and yet they're still ranked because like Tim Tadlock always has them ready. I kind of look at Arkansas the same way, and they're not necessarily the same program, but I look at them the same way as I did with Florida State under Mike Martin. If you remember, Phil, I mean, this is a program that, like, they could lose half their team, and, like, you could pencil them in the top 10. Like, they were going to be in that top 10, top 15 every single year, no matter who they lose. And I think Arkansas is kind of that program now. I just hope Arkansas is not that program that, like, Florida State, where they're always top 10 and 15, we don't win a national championship. Arkansas will win a national championship. But that is a good comp in terms of just the consistency of the program.
So LSU, as you guys write, are a clear-cut number one heading into Jay Johnson's second season. He's an interesting head coach. He's a little different than what I've seen in the SEC previously. But obviously it worked at Arizona, and they had some moments last year. Why LSU a clear-cut number one?
I think we look at LSU overall. I mean, I think when you look at these guys offensively, we talk so much about, Tommy White and Dylan Cruz, but I think when you look at some of these other pieces they had back, like getting a veteran Jordan Thompson back, like getting Trey Morgan back. I mean, if you remember, you've seen Trey Morgan the last couple of years, he's a really good hitter. He's not going to hit him for a ton of power, but he's a really good hitter. But where he saves them is defensively. Like, man, he is a master magician in terms of picking the ball to the dirt. I love kind of having that guy over at first base in such an important position. I think when you look at LSU from a pitching standpoint, I'm trying to find a weakness with this pitching staff. I think when you look at Paul Skeens on the front end, granted, there will be a transition for Paul going from Air Force to LSU, but you're talking about a guy who's literally sitting 98 to 102 this fastball in the fall. Changeup is up to 94, and the slider is in the upper 80s. You talk about a guy like that, Grant Taylor had spin rates over 3,000 the day I saw LSU in the fall. Ty Floyd's taking a big step forward. And then you get Thatcher Hurd and Christian Little from UCLA and Vanderbilt, respectively. I mean, that's an incredibly, incredibly deep pitching staff. Where I think the question mark with LSU is how do they handle the expectations? That will be difficult.
You're going to have to be at Baum April 14th through April 16th. I can't imagine another series. Maybe Ole Miss, Mississippi State, because those are the last two national champions. But, man, I mean, Arkansas, Tennessee, the fans are ready for it. And it's going to be one of the biggest series of the entire year in the sport.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be fantastic. It's kind of funny the SEC accidentally left that off the schedule. What's funny is when I tweeted that out, the SEC office is like, oh, wait, they have to play. And so it's just funny how that kind of accidentally went down. But, as intense as series will be, I think it's going to be a little more, tame with the coaches than you would think. I think if you're Tony Vitello and you look back at, just the kind of, I wouldn't say outrage is the right word, but just kind of the venom that kind of created when that all went down a couple of years ago, this is a guy that's a former Arkansas assistant. So I think he's going to come in there at Fayetteville. I think he's going to kind of pass the olive branch, not necessarily the DVH, but I think he's going to pass the olive branch to the fan base to try to kind of take some of the pressure and some of the heat off his team. So, man, I can't wait. I mean, you talk about that series. I mean, you're talking about Tennessee at LSU. Unfortunately, that's opening weekend in Major League Baseball, but, the number of just fantastic series this year is insane. I mean, you think about LSU. I was talking to Jay Johnson about this at the coaching convention. LSU opens conference play at A&M. I mean, a top 5 team. So it's going to be fascinating to see how things unfold in the SEC this year.
People that make the rules in college baseball, I think, are trying to move the game along a little bit. They've changed the idea of celebrating home runs. Everybody's got to stay in the dugout now. I love it. And the pitch clock. They're going to adhere to the pitch clock, finally. I'm not saying the days of 4-hour games are over because it's still college baseball. But They're going to move it along a little more. The question I have for you, though, Kendall, is there is no sport between college and professional that is as close to being identical as baseball is. So with the rules implemented in the majors this next year, how soon before we see the same rules in college baseball? No shift, infielders have to be on the dirt, 2 pickoff moves to the base, that kind of stuff. Are we going to see this sometime soon? And do you think automatic ball strike at some point?
Yeah, I mean, we're a long way away from the automatic stuff. I mean, Major League Baseball is not even completely to that yet. But, I think if the shift rules, are popular at the Major League level, I could see that moving down to or permeating down to the collegiate level. I think what's going to be really interesting is if college eventually goes to like a universal extra inning rule that Major League Baseball has, because they've already implemented to where conferences have the ability and coaches have the ability to actually do that this year. Like coaches could actually be at home plate and go, hey, we're going to adhere to the new extra inning rule and actually do that. So that's the other one I really wonder if they end up doing in the future in college baseball. The other thing too is pitch comm technology. There's a lot of professional teams out there. Vanderbilt used it last year they use the wristbands, but the pitch comm technology where it kind of buzzes in your hat. They use it in the major leagues a lot now. I think that's something else that's going to come to college baseball and be a lot more rampant than it already is. I've talked to 5 or 6 power conference coaches that have already started to look into pitch comm. So there are going to be a lot of moving parts in college baseball. And you mentioned the pitch count. The biggest thing for me is let's be consistent about this. I remember a couple of years ago, when Kumar Rocker was called for a pitch clock violation in Omaha, but 3 or 4 times earlier in the World Series that year, Deion didn't enforce the rule at all. So for me, I like being a little bit more aggressive on the pitch clock rules, but let's actually enforce it. Let's be consistent in the enforcement of that. It kind of reminds me a little bit of the football targeting penalty, so to speak. The rule of law makes sense, but let's be consistent on how it's enforced. And I think that's kind of what they're looking for here in college baseball with the pitch clock rules.
Kendall, before we let you go, and if you can fit it in 30 seconds, SEC Extra. Sure. Tell us about the new subscription service at D1 Baseball.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing for us is the SEC is the largest and most kind of rabid fan base in college baseball, especially Arkansas fans. The biggest thing we wanted to do is go, hey, we're not going to change anything that we're doing right now. We're still covering the SEC a lot, but what we want to do, we're going to go hire 2 full-time people, and we're just going to quadruple the amount of SEC coverage that we have without putting it straight on D1 Baseball's front page. So if you want just an outrageous amount of SEC content throughout the baseball season, just head on over and get a D1 Baseball SEC Extra subscription. It's going to be a lot of fun. We hired 2 pros, Mark Ethers, who used to run SC Baseball, is kind of helping run point on that. So I'm excited, to say the least.
BetOnline remains your number one source for all your sports betting this season. Everything from the NFL and bowl season to esports. You'll find the latest odds, team matchup info, player news, and game trends at BetOnline. BetOnline features live betting, free contests, and live scores for almost any sport or game imaginable. We're the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite leagues and events. Head to betonline.ag to join and receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Make sure to use the promo code BELIEVE to receive your rewards. That's BLEAV. BetOnline, where the game starts.